Earlier today, I filmed a video for INFJs talking about one of your superpowers, which is being really clear on what you want or what your preferences are. Having that J where you're certain on things and how that can free up a lot of mental space and save you from the sort of indecision that us ENFPs or INFPs often have to deal with. But there can be a dark side to that, and it's something that I've seen in my clients become a real hindrance. And that's what I want to talk about today. What happens if your J becomes way too strong? If you get dug in and you, some might say, become a little bit stubborn, a little bit inflexible, maybe, and what sort of an impact that can have on your life. So this is coming from my experience working with quite a few INFJs, but there is one in particular that I dare label my most difficult client ever. And she wasn't difficult in terms of having a bad attitude or being dislikable or anything like that. And actually, she's raved about me and is a happy client. So none of that sort of negative stuff, but difficult in that the amount of super coach Dan I had to pull out to get us some progress was really more than is normally required. Ultimately, what had happened with this woman is her J just became too strong, not only because of her personality, but because of her work. There's a really good book called The Happiness Advantage, and in one of the chapters it talks about something called the Tetris effect. And long story short, basically, the more you do something, the more you wire your brain to keep doing that sort of thing. So the Tetris effect comes from people who were playing Tetris all day, and then they'd be walking around a city, and literally they'd be seeing how the buildings would fit in with each other like a game of Tetris. And what the book was looking at is people who work in professions where your job is to find errors and prevent mistakes, train themselves to basically be hard asses and difficult partners and ultimately to be more depressed. So think of accountants, think of lawyers. I mean, there's many types of law, but in most areas of law, your job is to anticipate problems, find mistakes, pick apart other people's arguments. It's really about training your mind to be pessimistic. That's what a good lawyer does in most cases. So if you spend all day, and lawyers don't exactly work short hours, training your brain to be pessimistic, how open to possibility are you going to be when you meet some guy named Dan and you're thinking, hey, I want to start my own business, I want to do something more creative, when you've been training your brain for 20 years to think in a certain, really structured, pessimistic way? The answer is it's going to be really, really hard. And so, if you are a younger INFJ, you want to pay attention to this. And really anyone, you should pay attention to this. But I think especially with INFJs, you want to be really careful about this. So you want to pay attention to your mental patterns. You find yourself becoming more closed off. You might want to think about the types of professions you want to get into. There's a reason some professions, I think lawyers on average have 3 or 4 divorces each. That's not a coincidence. So, on this channel, I talk a lot about life design, about figuring out not just like how much money you can earn or this or that, but like what would really make me happy, and then being very intentional with your life. So if you're younger, it's something to think about. Hey, what effect is this profession going to actually have on my brain, on my relationships, on my way of being? On a bit of the opposite, my profession being, well, I guess I have many in some ways, but thinking of a coach, part of what I do best is see the possibility in people, help them believe in themselves, help them create a strategic plan, and help them take action, overcome fear, and make a better life. So I have the opposite problem, where I can probably be more of a sucker because I've trained my brain to see the best in everyone, and that's not always the right case, right? See my video on the time I sold stolen laptops without knowing it for an example of that. So what happened with this client, and ultimately what can you do if you are an INFJ and you do find yourself being a bit more stubborn and being stuck. If someone suggests new opportunities or possibilities, you're just like, no, that wouldn't work, that wouldn't work. Well, the first thing you can look at, and this is something you'll have to research more and go a bit deeper, is different exercises to open yourself up and soften that J to become a bit more creative and to become a bit more grateful. So something like a gratitude practice where you take a few minutes at the end of every day and think about all the things that you're grateful for is a great way to increase optimism, which is of course contrary to pessimism. So it's going to help you appreciate things and will improve things in that way. You might also want to look into something artistic, everything from doing some improv lessons to painting classes to all sorts of other things, as well as changing your influences. So if you do work in somewhere like law, well, probably a lot of the things you read are written by lawyers, and they're going to have a similar way of looking at the world as you might. And so you might want to start reading some inspirational autobiographies or reading some different stories about people who overcame the odds. Maybe right now you think in this way, like statistically, this isn't realistic. Maybe, but maybe you don't want to be realistic because you don't want an average life, right? So start changing your influences and see who you could follow who has done something against the odds. And maybe you see like, actually, that is possible. I could do that. Now with this client, it was actually at an in-person event. We worked together and we did ultimately figure something out. It was at the buzzer, I'll be honest. But ultimately, I figured out something that got her really excited. So a vision, something she could pursue that seemed realistic enough. Like she thought, hey, you know what? I could actually do this. This is possible. And was also, though, exciting and something that would be really worth getting out of bed for. Because sometimes what happens as well, if you get a little too realistic, is you lose a bit of that enthusiasm for life, where things don't become worthwhile because you think, yeah, but all the hassle and the risk, is it really worth it? So if you want to get through this, one, work on some training exercises, like I mentioned, the gratitude exercise and maybe something like improv or something artistic. And then number two, when you're thinking of what you could do, try to think of something that would actually be pretty inspiring and get you excited to take a bit of a risk. And then look for examples of people who've done the sort of thing you want to do so you feel like, hey, actually, this is very possible. I hope you found this helpful. In the comments below, if you are an INFJ or maybe you have experience with someone with a strong J, let me know what your experience has been like. This is not by all means all INFJs, but for certain INFJs, this can definitely be a struggle, and I wanted to put this out there in the hopes of helping you out. If you are new to the channel, I publish new videos each and every week for NF personality types, so consider hitting subscribe and the bell, and I will catch you in the next video soon. And if you are an ENFP, I do actually have a free training program I've created for my fellow ENFPs. If you go to dreamsaroundtheworld.com/ENFP training or click the card that will pop up here, you can get access to that free training. It has some of my best advice, things that I don't share anywhere else.